I don't believe that the market is necessarily in trouble. From a B2B Tech Marketers perspective, I think about the only piece of advice that is mildly self-evident but exceptionally relevant is use this time to develop competencies around data. The ability to understand your customer, the ability to generate a single view of who your customer actually is across your CRM systems, your marketing automation systems, your customer data platform, now is far more critical than ever before. The inherent weakness, I think, into a lot of the practice for marketing across the region really has been an over-reliance upon tactical solutions. And the one obviously most impacted by the virus is face-to-face events. Far too many of the customers that we see, without naming names, are overly reliant on old metrics and the tactics used to achieve those old metrics. And the one that springs to mind, obviously, would be bums on seats. So face-to-face events for the foreseeable future are no longer viable. And the desire to default into anything virtual without the implicit understanding that virtual will never replace face-to-face is a path that you should not take as a marketer. Yes, you can run webinars. Yes, you can run a whole host of whiz-bang, flashy virtual events, and you should continue to do so. Doing nothing is not an option. However, the opportunity lies in the ability now to refocus budget and energy into gaining a more complete view of the customer. Customers do not buy because they attended an event where a speaker stood up and told them about the net new feature functionality of this chipset or this new server array. That's not how business works. Unfortunately, what we've seen in the market over the past even 10 years has been this heavy reliance on these face-to-face events. So accordingly, from a marketeer's perspective, the scramble, the panic, because these events are going away, is magnified. The ability to redeploy that budget, redeploy the energies against something that is more data-driven, is something that will allow an organization to create smarter content that speaks to an audience that is hungry for information and advice that talks to their individual set of problems within their individual vertical, their organization, their geo, is doubly, triply important now than it ever was before. And that's not something that can be achieved through a face-to-face event. So when we talk about the challenges that face marketeers in the COVID era, what we're really talking about is a traditional channel to market disappearing, face-to-face events, and the knee-jerk reaction to replace it with something virtual, thinking that it's an apples-to-apples replacement. That is not the case. This is going to cause a fundamental shift in not only the events business, but the need, and it's a veritable separating of the wheat from the chaff, if you will, of the marketeers who are very good with data, who understand that the ability to create this customer view utilizing data and employing suppliers that understand how data on their side, from a supply side, integrates with the go-to-market side that's going to be the big game changer, I think. Webinars they've been around forever. Virtual events have been around for a long time. I think webinars are now a commodity that everybody understands is a very inefficient path to market. Virtual events, the capabilities are still being explored, but neither of the two solutions are what customers, end user customers, actually want when it comes to an education and solutioning perspective. Well, again, I think that's a bit of a fallacy. Both the organizations that I represent have been running events for the past 20 plus years. I've attended a number of these events as the de facto organizer, and I can tell you with a high degree of certainty that the bulk of the vendors that are attending don't do so with the sales presence in mind. They will set up a booth, they will collect name cards, they maybe have one or two meaningful conversations, but the sales organization is not there in force. So there aren't a lot of meaningful conversations that are occurring, and I'm speaking at scale. Some organizations obviously do this better than others. But there aren't a lot of sales-focused, deep conversations occurring at events for sales organizations. So to broadly say, sales love events, no, they don't. Sales usually isn't present for whatever reason. I think if we were to look at this from a marketing practice perspective, the best possible approach an organization can take in terms of enabling its sales force, creating that handshake between marketing and sales, really is through ABM. ABM obviously is one of the most misunderstood, overhyped tactics. In the world of a marketeer today, there are ABM platforms out there, but at its core, this is not meant to be a pure marketing activity. This is meant to be a customer enrichment platform that enables the sales organization to have a much better conversation, a much more intelligent conversation around individual customer pain points that affect their specific organization, so that they don't waste time with a potential vendor, either at the top of the funnel, mid, or bottom of the funnel, with getting through to, okay, here are my needs, how can you help me solve my needs? At the end of the day, that's what's important. And when an organization looks at deploying ABM, they should look at doing it from a scale perspective, from an extensibility perspective, from a cost effectiveness perspective, and clearly there are a ton of variables that make this very, very difficult. If we're talking about a tactic that does not speak to that problem, that does not speak to creating an ABM program, at least in the way that it's traditionally deployed, would be events. There is no true handshake between marketing and sales at an event, and that will not change. So once again, I get back to my original point that this presents a unique opportunities for marketeers to perhaps take a step back, redeploy a huge amount of budget that is traditionally used at what is, while still necessary, a largely ineffective old medium, old platform, old channel to market, and utilize it for something that is, by all metrics, far more effective in terms of not only return on investment, but that necessary handshake with sales. There is no silver bullet. If we look at economic downturns, recessions, lulls of different degrees of severity, and there is data out there, the firms that survive and prosper are not the firms that cut marketing out altogether. True, there are certain activities that can be reduced, right? There are certain buckets of spend around thought leadership and perhaps even brand awareness that can go away. I think the focus for a marketeer now necessarily needs to be around ROI or ROMI, and conversations with the CFO or their direct boss really needs to focus on that. So activities around lead and demand generation, around, going back to my other topic, account-based marketing, these are the activities that resonate far better from a ROI perspective, because they are provable. There is data out there that comes from multiple independent sources that show this works. Broad-based media campaigns, buying adverts, we've known for years, doesn't necessarily work. So the ability to deploy digital spend on a programmatic level is definitely something that organizations should start to look at. The ability to refine and improve their content marketing strategy, and doing that through the use of technology, not a product or a business unit owner wants to write something very specific about that solution set or that feature functionality, that will not necessarily work. To simply give up, to cut budget, I understand that a lot of people don't have control over this, but that's not the winning formula. Doing nothing or doing even less than nothing is not a formula for success. And every organization is different. The conversation with every individual responsible for budget will necessarily be different. But this too shall pass. And the advice we give all of our clients is be smarter. Don't hide. And if you hide, you're going to lose to your competition. This affects everybody. And if your organization is cutting marketing budgets down to the bare bone, be smart. If they're getting rid of them altogether, you're in trouble. And perhaps it's time to look for another job, because there are other firms out there that recognize you have to spend to stay ahead of the game, but you have to spend smart. Really, they're one organization with a legacy of two P&Ls that are doing complementary work. On the IDC perspective, obviously, we have a lot of insight into tech spend across multiple verticals, very, very segmented, very deep understanding of, especially from a historical perspective, how an exogenous event such as COVID, or even a structural event like the meltdown, the global financial crisis of 2008, affect tech spend. We have data around that, and we've seen a number of shifts in the market that ultimately were harbingers of what's the next new thing. E-learning as an example. E-learning has been around forever, but it took COVID to see this massive spike in revenues that are not just for e-learning companies, but all of the ecosystem players around it. So if you're a tech vendor and you are a cloud solution provider of any stripe, your ability to talk to an analyst who's an expert around cloud services as it applies to the new normal, what's going to happen in each of these burgeoning industries that are a result of COVID is invaluable. We will be able to help you model out what total addressable market should be over the next 12 months, 24 months, 60 months. From an IDG perspective, the value of, especially in light of the duopoly from a marketeer's perspective of Facebook and Google, of the importance of first-party data, intent-driven data is going to be magnified, irrespective of COVID, over the next 2 to 3 years, 20-fold. You need to start to look to providers, publishers, and solutioning experts that have access to first-party data, first-party intent data. Demand gen, lead gen, all of that is going to fundamentally change. It is all going to shift away from third-party suppliers and the over-reliance on your company's DMPs. Those are all going to disappear unless you're able to truly access a platform or an organization that can look into and has permission from users and their behavior. A lot of your marketing dollars and the content you create and the way you disseminate that will ultimately be wasted. And that's only going to become more and more important, irrespective of COVID. So if you're able to combine not only market insights from a trends perspective, where's my market moving? What is my competition doing? How should this be priced? What can I expect from this as a product set in terms of CAGR? With what is my audience actually looking at? What do they value? How are they consuming that content? What are they going to look at next? That, from a USP, from a value perspective, is IDG IDC is unique in the market. Nobody else has that. Don't stop. Keep working hard, but really begin to work on your ability to identify trends utilizing the data you already have within your existing systems, and then complement that with products and solutions from vendors, suppliers that understand how important this is. It's not good enough to just run an event. It's not good enough to just write a white paper. It's not good enough to just hand a profile of this is the type of business card lead I want and think that is going to work. Irrespective of COVID, your customers demand more. Your customers expect more. So your suppliers and that ecosystem must be able to deliver more to you as a tech vendor going forward.